To our other top story of the night, Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to more than 4 years.
If someone had told you
prison
5 years ago that Sean Diddy Combs would be trading his champagne-soaked parties for prison walls, you'd have laughed them out of the room. But here we are, and the music mogul who once ruled hip-hop with an iron fist is now looking at 50 months behind bars. For years and 2 months, to be precise. And if that doesn't make you wonder how the mighty have fallen, I don't know what will. Welcome back to the Monarchy Mirror, where today we're diving into a story that's less about crowns and more about consequences, less about palaces and more about prison cells. Because when you abuse power, whether you're wearing a crown or designer sunglasses, justice eventually catches up. And trust me, this one's a doozy. Let's cut straight to it. Judge Arun Subramanian just handed down a sentence that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. 50 months in federal prison and a $500,000 fine. Now, for a man who's worth hundreds of millions, $500,000 might sound like pocket change, but it's the principle that stings. The judge didn't mince words either. He called this sentence a message to abusers and victims alike, emphasizing that speaking out must bring real consequences, while abusers need to see these punishments as a proper deterrent. And honestly, about bloody time someone said it out loud. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating, because the night before his sentencing, Diddy did something we rarely see from men of his stature. He begged. Not suggested, not requested, but straight up begged the judge for mercy. The man who once declared "can't stop, won't stop" was literally pleading for leniency, stating he had no one to blame but himself. Now that's what I call character development, albeit 12 months too late. Because yes, he's already spent a full year at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, and judging by his courtroom performance, it wasn't exactly the 5-star accommodation he's accustomed to. So how did we get here? How does someone go from founding Bad Boy Records and becoming a cultural icon to facing a judge and apologizing for being disgusting, shameful, and sick? Buckle up, because this timeline is darker than a London winter evening. The 55-year-old mogul was arrested back in September of last year, and by July, he was convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Not sex trafficking, mind you, though that was one of the original charges alongside racketeering conspiracy. But the jury found him guilty specifically of transporting his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura and another woman, known in court as Jane, plus male sex workers across state lines. And if you're thinking this sounds like something from a crime thriller, you're not alone. Except this isn't fiction. This is real life, and real people got hurt. Now, let's talk about Cassie Ventura, because her name is absolutely central to this entire saga. Cassandra Ventura dated Combs from 2007 to 2018. 11 years. That's longer than some marriages, longer than most television series, and according to her testimony, 11 years of absolute hell. She testified that Combs beat her repeatedly and forced her into what she described as disgusting sexual encounters with male sex workers. Imagine being in a relationship where the person who's supposed to love you treats you like a prop in their twisted power games. It's horrifying, it's dehumanizing, and it's exactly what landed Combs in this courtroom. The moment that sentence was handed down, Cassie's attorney Doug Wigdor released a statement that perfectly captured the bittersweet nature of this verdict. He said, "While nothing can undo the trauma caused by Combs, the sentence imposed today recognizes the impact of the serious offenses he committed." He went on to express confidence that Cassie would continue healing, knowing her bravery inspired countless others. And you know what? That's the silver lining in this absolute catastrophe of a story. Because Cassie didn't just survive, she spoke up. She filed that initial civil lawsuit in November 2023, and while it settled within 24 hours with no admission of wrongdoing, she still cooperated with federal investigators. She still testified. She still stood up. Here's what makes this case particularly fascinating from a legal standpoint. Diddy's attorneys actually conceded to domestic violence during the trial. Let that sink in. They admitted their client was abusive, but argued that domestic violence doesn't automatically equal sex trafficking. It's like saying, yes, he's a terrible person, but he's not that kind of terrible person. The mental gymnastics required for that defense could win Olympic gold. But the prosecution wasn't buying it, and neither were Cassie's legal team. After the conviction, they were genuinely terrified about her safety when the defense pushed for Diddy's release on bail while awaiting sentencing. Her attorney wrote a letter to the judge stating, Ms. Ventura believes that Mr. Combs is likely to pose a danger to the victims who testified in this case, including herself, as well as to the community. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. When someone spent over a decade terrorizing you, you don't suddenly breathe easy just because there's a court verdict. Cassie's victim impact statement before sentencing was absolutely gut-wrenching. She wrote that the trial taught her victims and survivors will never be safe, and detailed how she still experiences nightmares and flashbacks daily, requiring ongoing psychological care. She confessed, "As much progress as I've made in recovering from his abuse, I remain very much afraid of what he is capable of and the malice he undoubtedly harbors towards me for having the bravery to tell the truth." That's not just trauma. That's someone living in perpetual fear of retribution. And honestly, can you blame her? But wait, because Cassie wasn't the only victim who stepped forward. Remember Jane, the model who testified under a pseudonym? Her account is equally disturbing. She stated that Combs put her in a chokehold, punched her in the face, and forced her into an encounter with a sex worker. 3 separate acts of violence and violation in what should have been a consensual relationship. And then there's the testimony from rapper Kid Cudi, who claimed Combs literally broke into his home in late 2011 after discovering he and Cassie were dating. Picture that scene. A jealous ex breaking into your house like some deranged stalker in a horror film. And people wonder why victims don't come forward immediately. Combs' former personal assistant, testifying as Mia, added another layer to this nightmare, saying he forcibly kissed her at his 40th birthday party. So we're not just talking about one relationship gone wrong. This is a pattern of behavior spanning years, multiple victims, and various forms of abuse. It's systematic. It's calculated. It's the behavior of someone who genuinely believed they were untouchable. During the actual sentencing hearing, the courtroom dynamics were absolutely riveting. Judge Subramanian noted that advisory guidelines suggested 6 to 7 years, and he saw no reason to deviate from that range. The prosecution had pushed for at least 11 years, arguing Combs did horrible things. Meanwhile, his defense team lobbied for just 14 months, considering he'd already spent 12 behind bars. The audacity of that request is staggering. 14 months for over a decade of abuse? That's barely a month per year of terror he inflicted. In his letter submitted the night before sentencing, Combs wrote that he had no one to blame but himself. But here's the thing about accepting responsibility. It has to come with genuine change and accountability, not just words designed to reduce your sentence. And based on the judge's decision, it seems the court agreed. When Judge Subramanian finally spoke, his words carried the weight of justice delayed, but not denied. He acknowledged Combs' achievements, his work as a self-made artist, his charitable contributions, his role in uplifting the Black community, and his family connections. But then came the hammer. He flatly rejected the defense's characterization of Combs' relationships with Cassie and Jane as consensual and intimate. "You abused them physically, emotionally, and psychologically," the judge declared, noting both women suffered thoughts of self-harm and trauma that will endure for life. He emphasized that the abuse spanned more than a decade, demanding a significant penalty. "You had the money and the power to keep it going," he added. This was subjugation. That word, subjugation, it's perfect. Because this wasn't about love or even lust. It was about control, about using wealth and influence to dominate and destroy. The judge made it crystal clear that this sentence was meant to send a message, that victims who speak out will see justice, and abusers will face real consequences. Combs' courtroom statement was something to behold. He thanked the judge for letting him finally speak up for myself, which is rather ironic considering he chose not to testify during the trial. He apologized to all victims of domestic violence, to Cassie personally, to her family, to each of his 7 children by name, to his mother Janice, and even to Jane. He called his actions disgusting, shameful, and sick, admitting, "I got lost in excess, I got lost in my ego." His attorney Mark Agnifilo tried painting these troubles as stemming from mental health struggles and drug use, arguing Combs had already suffered enough between public scrutiny, jail time, the raid on his home, and financial losses. But Judge Subramanian wasn't swayed. He described the evidence as massive, specifically referencing the savage video showing Combs assaulting Cassie in a hotel hallway and photographs of gashes and bruises. He concluded that a substantial sentence was necessary both as deterrent and message. 50 months. For years and 2 months. Plus that $500,000 fine. So where does this leave us? Well, Diddy's empire is in ruins, his reputation destroyed, and his freedom gone for the foreseeable future. Cassie and the other victims are beginning their long journey toward healing, though the scars will never fully disappear. And the rest of us are left wondering how many other powerful men are still operating with impunity, assuming their wealth and status make them invincible. If this case proves anything, it's that eventually the truth comes out. Eventually, victims find their voice. And eventually, even the most powerful men discover that no amount of money can buy your way out of consequences when the evidence is this damning. The question now isn't whether justice was served. It's whether this sentence will actually deter others from following in Combs' footsteps. Will this be a turning point, or just another headline that fades into obscurity while the cycle continues elsewhere? Because here at the Monarchy Mirror, we'll be watching, we'll be waiting, and we'll be ready to shine a light on the next abuse of power, whether it happens in a palace or a penthouse. So if you want to stay informed about the powerful being held accountable, make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment letting me know what you think about this sentence. Is 50 months enough? Too much? And what happens next in this saga? Trust me, this story isn't over yet. Cassie's victim impact statement before sentencing was absolutely gut-wrenching. She wrote that the trial taught her victims and survivors will never be safe,